If the army felt like it, that is. "Well, let's get on with it," Lewrie grumbled. "Hoist signals for Harcourt and Elms to begin, if you please, Mr. Westcott." "Aye, sir," Westcott said, turning to the men of the afterguard on the poop deck to strike the single flag hoist, the sign to execute. "Look at 'em," Lewrie groused, all those eager, bright, shining faces just straining at the leash to get going. "Ha!" The ship's second officer, Lieutenant Harcourt, and her third officer, Lieutenant Elms, shouted orders, and the gunboats got under way, separating into 2 groups of 4, with sailors heaving hard on their oars to get the heavy boats going, and coxswains at the tillers calling out the stroke. Lewrie could hear an enthusiastic cry arise, but that would most likely be from one of the youngest of Sapphire's midshipmen, who didn't know any better. "Yea, we're going somewhere," Lewrie scoffed to himself. "Ain't it just devilish grand?" It must here be pointed out that Captain Alan Lewrie, before he had become Sir Alan Lewrie, Baronet, had been press-ganged into the Navy by his own father when he was 17, in the middle of the American Revolution, to collect an inheritance on Lewrie's mother's side that would save the old rogue from debtor's prison whilst Alan was away and all unknowing, and that Midshipman Alan Lewrie had never been a gladsome sailor, or quite that young, either, to be perfectly honest. Lewrie fetched his day-glass and mounted to the poop deck to observe the first morning's evolutions. The awnings were rigged over the deck against the Mediterranean sun and the rare rain, even if it was getting on for late November of 1807. Near the head of the larboard ladderway, his collapsible wooden canvas deck chair sat most invitingly, but, after a moment's longing look, Lewrie steeled himself to stand and look somewhat the proper sea captain. The ship's mascot, Biscuit the dog, had been loafing aft on the flag lockers, but came trotting up for pets. After a proper greeting and ruffling of his fur, Biscuit hopped into the chair himself, tongue lolling as if he knew he was getting away with something. "Bloody idle usurper," Lewrie muttered to the dog, smiling even so, then raised his telescope to watch the gunboats manoeuvre. With wig-wagged, hand-held flags, Harcourt and Elms directed their sections of gunboats into line ahead, headed out as if to row towards Algeciras and challenge the Spanish, then wheeled them into 2 separate groups in line abreast. Very raggedly, Lewrie thought, even if it was the sailor's first try. But he willed himself to be patient. The next evolution that he and his officers had discussed would be a bit harder. The 12-pounder guns in the boat's bows were fixed on wheeled carriages, and the whole boat must be slewed about to aim them. Harcourt and Elms would order their boats to wheel about in their own lengths, as if they had fired, and would retire to reload. One bank of oars must stroke ahead, whilst the opposite bank of oarsmen must either backwater or jab their oar blades into the sea for breaks. The little flags wagged again. Though the gunboats were over 200 yards off by then, Lewrie could distinctly hear Lieutenant Harcourt swearing a blue streak as some of those breaking oars snapped like twigs. To make matters even worse, 2 boats in Lieutenant Elms's group had their tillers put hard over in the wrong direction, causing all 4 of his boats to collide. The helmsmen in that group outshouted Lieutenant Harcourt, each blaming the other for the accidents. Lewrie could make out "Tom Noddy" and "Hen-headed lubber" and "Cack-handed idjus, you jeed when you should 'a' hawed." Even more oars were damaged as they'd scraped down each other's sides. "Lord, sir," Lieutenant Westcott said, astonished. "Show 'em the recall hoist, Mr. Westcott," Lewrie ordered in sad amusement, shaking his head and slowly collapsing the tubes of his telescope, before the Spanish spot 'em and laugh themselves to death. "This looks like it's going to be a damned long day." Fully armed and manned, the boats were just too heavy for the normal oars used in ship's boats to get them going from a dead stop, to backwater and shift their aim quickly, or bring them to a quick stop. They'd snap every time, leap out of the thole pins that held them, and slam oarsmen hard in their chests. "Send ashore to the dockyards, Mr. Westcott, and my compliments to Captain Middleton," Lewrie decided, "but what we need on the boats are cut-down sweeps, bigger oar blades with thicker, stronger shafts, and perhaps even thicker and stronger sets of thole pins. If he can pad the loom ends so they don't cripple my sailors every time they break or